Hey everyone, welcome to the Stride to Freedom podcast. My name is Russell Benaroya, and I'm the co-founder of Stride Services, a virtual back-office bookkeeping and accounting firm serving hundreds of clients around the United States. This podcast is designed to help small business owners focus on growth and innovation. In other words, focus on those things that inspired you to start your business in the first place. We call it your Genius Zone. We do our job on this podcast when business owners feel like they have the trust and confidence to build the right team of partners around them that will help them grow. Thanks for joining. Let's go. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Stride to Freedom podcast, where we help business leaders get and stay in their genius zone. I am your host, Russell Benaroya. It is great to be with all of you today. You may wonder, what is your genius zone? Well, your genius zone is that thing that you do that feels effortless for you, where you make an outsized impact, where you're not keeping track of time. And if you could do it all the time, you absolutely would. We want to create the space for you to spend as much time in that as possible, which is why our responsibility on this podcast is to bring guests to the show that are in the business of helping other leaders get and stay in their zone of genius. You might ask what our zone of genius is as a sponsor of the Stride to Freedom podcast at Stride Services, where we provide outsourced back office and bookkeeping, accounting, and fractional CFO support. Well, our genius zone is helping business owners use data to make better business decisions. Okay. Let's jump into the episode today. Today is a bit of a mixed bag. I'm going to call it a bit of an experiment that I haven't run before, which makes me equally excited and slightly anxious. But I have the distinct pleasure of being joined today by one of the leading SEO marketing agencies on the planet, Glen from Bear Fox Marketing. Glen, hi.
Hi there. Nice to be here, Russell.
Great to see you. And simultaneously, having one of the largest IT service companies in the Pacific Northwest, Help Desk Cavalry, led by Steve Treanor on the show. Hey, Steve.
Hey, Russell. Great. Appreciate being here as a guinea pig.
Oh, thank you for acknowledging that. So the question is, why would I have them both on the show? Because I want to merge two worlds today. First, I want to bring to the audience some knowledge about the power of search engine optimization and how companies can benefit from it and frankly, even determine if it's right for their business. And I'm sure many of you have heard about the term SEO and organic search traffic for a long time, but I've harnessed the power of Glen to share his knowledge and the latest thinking around that strategy. But I want to do it in the context of maybe looking at it through the eyes of a managed service provider like Help Desk Cavalry, who's a small, mid-sized, growing business and is thinking about, how do I build a referral engine in my business that transcends the business owner, Steve Treanor, which would be awesome, right, Steve?
Absolutely, be fantastic.
Okay, so good. So we're going to do a little bit of a Q&A. We'll learn a little bit from each other, and we'll use a bit of Help Desk Cavalry's goals and objectives to answer some questions around the application of where SEO may, or in some cases may not, be relevant for the business. But just so we anchor on the right starting point, Glen, maybe you could just set the stage for us and talk a little bit about you, Bear Fox, and SEO, and the types of companies that benefit from what you do.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So yeah, I'm co-owner here at Bear Fox. Bear Fox has been around for about 7 years now. So we partner up and we help small businesses. We help them predictably scale their growth, right? And so we do that by SEO is kind of our primary tool to help them do that. And when we say search engine optimization, what we mean by that is getting people noticed, getting them right up at the top of Google on those search engine results, so that when they're looking for, IT managed services near me and they're in a local area that your website is coming up top and you're getting a majority of that traffic coming in so it can generate new business for you. So that's what we do. I love that we get to have this conversation today because there's so many things. And there's some industries, I love the honest conversation because sometimes SEO might not be the best fit. And sometimes it's a great fit. And there's some things you can do for free. And there's some things that it's going to cost you a little bit of investment to do it. But I love SEO for small businesses. And I love, that's kind of what I kind of get the satisfaction. You talk about what gets you up in the morning is I love helping small businesses to grow. So
yeah, awesome. Okay, we're gonna double click on more SEO content in a minute. But Steve, maybe give a little bit of background on the history of Help Desk Cavalry and what have been both the catalysts as well as some of the obstacles to growing the business as a small business owner.
Sure, Russell. So Help Desk Cavalry is, as you said, a managed service provider here in Kitsap County here up in the Northwest. And we are about 10 years old now and have grown organically. A lot of referral-based growth. We've got a reputable name in the area, bump into people, and they all want to do business with people that they know. And that's been fantastic. But Glenn mentioned something that was pretty key, and that's predictive. I've had zero predictive knowledge on what our growth is going to look like. And that's significantly of interest to us moving forward as we're trying to make much larger plans and move in certain directions. So I'm excited about this opportunity to get to know Glenn and understand how SEO might be able to help benefit us.
And that lack of predictability, is that largely because in any given month, it's I'll call it the Steve Treanor hustle, or maybe you have a salesperson, and you're out networking, but you just don't know. It comes in fits and starts, and it's hard to plan. Is that what I'm hearing?
Very much so. And on top of that, you end up accepting anybody who's knocking on the door because you are friends with somebody that they know. So you're not targeting your clientele that you'll really do better business with. And I think that the proactive targeting with SEO, or I'm assuming, we haven't focused on that ourselves, but we're now at that stage that we want to be proactive in our marketing efforts and target specific types of industries or size of organizations or whatever it is that we find that lines up well for us.
Right, because when you have a prospective customer that's knocking on your door, you're looking at potential revenue, but you're also looking at potential variability because they may not be the customer segment you typically like to serve, or maybe they don't have the characteristics of or attributes where you're highly, highly confident you can crush it, but you take the business because, hey, you don't know where's the next lead coming from.
Exactly.
I'm feeling you. Glenn, you're feeling us. So how does SEO help to crystallize or clarify getting the right customers with some level of predictability to avoid the whipsaw associated with uncertain lead generation?
Yeah, and that's honestly, that's something that what Steven talked about is something that's very common. Is when you're word of mouth, you kind of get those as they come in and they're haphazard. What we look at with SEO is how many people are actually looking for your particular services each month, and is there relevant search volume around that? How much is it? Is it worth really going after? And the end goal is to get an evergreen flow of interested traffic and leads that are generated from that each month. And the one thing that's really nice, if you're setting it up right, you can target in on exactly. Sometimes we use complicated words like long tail keywords, short tail keywords. Like we want to go after the more specific and focused we can be with our SEO in terms of what type of search keywords we want to go after. That's going to help bring in the right type of relevant traffic that's going to be more likely to convert. And those are the kind of clients that you want to have, right?
Mm-hmm. Is SEO as relevant and opportunistic today as, say, it was 5 or 10 years ago, Glenn? Or are the Google wizard oracles of the world finding ways to stop it? Right.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And there's a variety of opinions on that. Some folks think that, oh, geez, SEO is dead, and the time that was from 10, 12 years ago. The true answer, in my opinion, on that is that it's still very much alive and well. It's just changed significantly. The algorithms that Google uses has changed. Even just over the last 4 months, it's changed so much since ChatGPT and all of this AI has come out. It's crazy how much it's changed, right? But if I think the approach that I would suggest to people when it comes to SEO is sometimes you'll hear these ideas of, oh, we're trying to trick Google or trick the algorithm. That's not a good sustainable way, because you're always gonna, if you're trying to work the system or trying to outthink Google, it's just not going to work well for you, right? And so I think the important thing when it comes to SEO is trying to understand how that algorithm works, and then how can we work within that algorithm to make sure that we can elevate our website's authority, its popularity, so that we can get the right kind of leads coming in. And we've got a very good way of doing that, a very good system that works very predictably, but it's in a very Google friendly way.
Speaking of Google friendly, Steve, you have 157 5-star Google reviews. 157 5-star Google reviews, which is really awesome for a professional service firm. I'm wondering if you'd be willing to give away your secret on how do you get 157 5-star Google reviews? It's very notable. And then I want to trend that into how does that help with SEO, which is my follow-up for Glenn. But maybe you could talk about your success and people's willingness to write about it.
Well, when you have thousands of clients that you're supporting, and you ask them on the end of every engagement that you have with them, I guess 150 doesn't sound too bad, but
it could be more.
Rolling that, we'll keep trying to grow that. But exactly what your question was is, how can I leverage that? What does that? How can I move that forward, Glenn?
Yeah. Well, I love that that you're proactive about that, and it's part of your engagement with your customer. It's so smart. I think one way you can really leverage that is one of the lowest hanging fruits when it comes to SEO that not a lot of people are really aware of. Is it's changed names now. Now it's called Google Business Profile. And what you do is you go on. It used to be called Google My Business, if some of them are familiar with that. But basically, what it is that's where your Google reviews lie. It's where you're on Google Maps. You also want to turn on your voice search. So right now, these days, it's about 2 out of 3 people that are searching, that are going on the internet right now, or on a mobile device. And so, what having a profile on Google Business Profile will do is allow you to show up in Google Maps and be able to show up when somebody's on their phone saying, "Hey Siri, what's a good IT management company near me?" Right? Sorry, Siri's actually responding to me right now. But
yes, don't say Alexa. Don't say that word.
You get the idea, right? You get the idea. Is that's something that you can do. You can post content on that page. You can get your reviews, and that's going to help you. All of those kind of play into that local search. So especially if you're a local business and you're going after local clientele, that would be something, and it's free. It's something that everybody can do.
Yeah, and MSPs, managed service providers, are typically a local business. Steve, would you agree? Like, it's typically within a particular geographic radius.
That's where you have the strong hold on organizations as far as building a partnership and a relationship, but it'll grow over time, where people don't need, now everybody's working from home, so having businesses that we're supporting remotely isn't necessarily the same negative that it used to be. So we do have some national coverage, but that's not where I would initially want to focus my SEO. I don't believe, and that might be something that, you know, Glenn can talk about, is when we start off with an SEO platform, should we be targeting a specific locale, or should it be just a vertical nationwide?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Google's going to naturally, they're going to give preferential treatment to those local searches, like, you know, as we're looking. And so what's really smart, and this is the exercise that we like to start with when we're assessing an opportunity for a small business like that, is to say, okay, what are the best opportunities? So first, talking with the company and say, okay, what are those services that are really profitable to me, that I really want to focus on, that I want to get new clients for? And then what we can do is do some keyword research inside of Google and say, okay, what are some similar keywords that people are looking for right now in these areas, in these geographic markets where I like to play? And then, is there enough volume? That's kind of my number one question that I kind of have on my list is SEO right for you? Is there enough people that are searching for my services that are really relevant in my area? That's number one. And then number two is, how difficult are these different keywords to get top page ranking for? And so if we look in some places, like if you live in a small community with 10,000 people and there's only 10 people searching for IT, maybe not even that, maybe there's 2 people searching for IT managed services in that area, it might not be a really good investment for you. But if you're in an area that covers, you know, a couple 100,000 people, and there's some decent search volume that's very relevant for your business, and it's not that difficult to get, well, that's a good opportunity for you, right?
And are you able to run reports on the volume of searches that are going on in your area?
Yeah. The way, a good analogy is to kind of look at it from like a low-hanging fruit, right? As we can say, because it's within the tools that we have, you can assess and say, okay, on a 100-point scale, from 100 being extremely difficult to get these keywords and 0 being extremely easy, the lowest hanging fruit is you say, okay, what are some relevant search traffic for my business right now that's not that difficult to get? How much volume is there? Start there, and then once you start getting top page rankings for that, and then you move up to the next low hanging fruit and the next, and you move up that way. So that way you can, that helps small businesses, because sometimes we want to see wins quickly. And that's a really good way to do that, is start with those battles that we can win in the short term. And then as we win those battles, now we can move to the next low hanging fruit, those that are a little bit more difficult to us. Like for example, if I've got a business in New York City and I'm going after a broad term, I don't know, a broad search term that's got millions of visitors, that's going to be more competitive than if I'm going after a really small niche for a particular industry or market or geographic area. And so that's going to be easier for me to get, right?
And your comment triggers a thought for me, which is, this all presupposes that you know your value proposition in the market. It presupposes that you've done the strategy work to be able to articulate, this is the problem that we solve. These are the types of customers that we serve best. This is the vertical where we believe we can differentiate ourselves. So, Glenn, would you recommend that before a company goes all in to work with Bear Fox, that they've done some of the requisite business model canvassing and design work, so that we're not just throwing a bunch of spaghetti against the wall?
Exactly. It's kind of like that spray and pray type of fun. We're hoping this works, and we think we know, but we have no idea, right? That is so important, and it saves you so much time and so much money if you do that proper work up front. And it really doesn't take more than a few days to kind of assess that and say, is this a really good opportunity for me or not? And how big is the prize? How long is it going to take us to get there? And so that way you're going into it with your eyes wide open to know, okay, here's a laser focused plan on here's where we're going to start. Then we go here, and then also how to do it. So it'll give us some milestones to say, where should we be at this point, right? So we'll break that down. We'll say, well, how much how much of this traffic can we pull into our site in the next 3 to 4 months? And where are we going to be at 6 months and 12 months, so that we can see how this is going to scale up and then how we build that up over time, right? One nice thing about SEO that I love is that it's very much like building equity in your home. Like, if, there's a place for advertising as well. Advertising is kind of like renting, right? I'm buying that keywords, or I'm buying that traffic into my website. But then as soon as I stop paying Google, or as soon as I stop paying LinkedIn or Facebook, those leads stop coming in, right? So with SEO, one thing that's so great about it, in my opinion, is it builds up cumulatively. So even if you have to stop investing in your SEO or stop the work, it's going to have a much longer half-life. It's going to stay with you. And that's why they say it's free leads or free traffic, because you build it up and then it kind of stays with you.
So is there a cost focus that you, based on the types of words that you want to be searchable for? Like for an MSP, you may have a backup solution that is a primary focus, or a phone system that's a primary focus, or IT. You want to do all of them at once, or will you focus on one category for a short amount of time and then move on?
That's a great question. It's gonna be a combination of all. It's gonna be, we have to say, okay, how valuable are these services to your company, and how much are really core to what you want to do? And then we can find different keyword options that can play right into that aren't super difficult to own. Sometimes we call those longer tail keywords. Like if I'm looking at, IT, I'm going to come back to that example, IT managed services for healthcare in Seattle area, right? That's a very long tail keyword, not as difficult to get, very specific and to you. And so we can get that granular and then own, 50 of those keywords, as opposed to 1 to 2 of the broader keywords that you get. Does that answer your question, Steve?
Yeah. And then you also mentioned the different ways that we're coming into, or to build your site. So I know back 10, 20 years ago, we used to make sure that we had links going outside of our site that are pointing to other vendors or partners of ours. Is that still a thing? Does that help with SEO? How does that work?
Yeah, it's a great question. So usually what we talk about the SEO pyramid, and I'll just take a couple minutes to explain it. First is if you have a good web developer or programmer, you want to make sure that your website, we call this technical SEO, it's that there's a good user experience, it uploads quickly, it's secure. Google needs to be able to scan your website and understand really cleanly what you guys are about, and who you're trying to market to, and what your company's all about. There's a lot that goes into that, but that's kind of your base, your foundation of that pyramid. Then the next layer up is content, right? And with SEO, we always talk about content is king, and it's really marketable content. We want to make sure that we're adding content regularly to the website. And then we're also, if we have social media pages, we're linking back to that content, or we're linking out to it. That's really important. The last element, the kind of the cap of that pyramid, is what you're talking about. And that's where, if we want to be really authoritative and popular within our industry, what we do is we go out and we share some of the content that we're putting up on our website, and then we ask other websites that are trusted. That's the important word, is we don't want to go out and buy cheap links from India or Russia just so that we can go get them. So you talked about how SEO has changed. That's how it's changed, is we can't do that, and you can't do that anymore. We need to go out and get legitimate other websites, media outlets, bloggers, to share that content and then link back to it. And that's, as you do that, that elevates your authority with Google. They're going to put you up higher on the rankings, and you're going to be able to get more of that traffic coming through. So those are kind of the 3 legs of the stool: the technical on-site, the content, and then the off-site, the backlink builds.
Steve, over the years, what experiments have you run to resource in marketing at Help Desk Cavalry, and what has worked What have you found that has worked well when you've brought in a resource to kind of own it, right? Because you, Steve, are trying to stay focused on the horizon. I'm trying to build equity value. I'm trying to close bigger deals. And as much as I absolutely love you on this podcast today, right? There's also you've basically done is you've put on a marketing hat today in your organization. And so I'm wondering, have you ever had anybody in a marketing role that kind of would otherwise oversee this? And did it work? Didn't it work? And what did it get you thinking about?
Sure. Because we've been primarily referral based, our focus solely in marketing has been brand recognition. It's just been making sure that our website is legit, that we've got, we're following the guidelines and setting up for the future, but not pulling any triggers on campaigns and whatnot, other than to our current client base. So we do newsletters and we have blogs that are put out regularly, and we do social media as far as LinkedIn and Facebook. I'm interested to hear what Glenn has to say about leveraging any of the other ones in a B2B scenario. But again, it's really just been our focus for marketing from my stance has been, hey guys, make sure that everything is looking right so that we are a legit organization from any aspect of looking at us, and be prepared to start marketing to future clientele, but not yet. And so now I'm wondering what my next steps are going to be and where we should be focusing.
Got it. So your marketing work has validated your value proposition through look and feel and content, but it hasn't been used as an arrow or a spear for acquisition, validation versus acquisition. Okay, great. You're probably not alone. That's good to know. Glenn, Steve asked a good question. It was on my mind as well. There are other outlets, social and otherwise, that seem to pop up, for me at least, at the right time to convert me to buy something. Do you also play in that arena, and how might Steve be thinking about it?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And I love, there was a survey that comes out each year, and what they do is they survey 300 business owners and they ask them which channels are the highest return on investment, like where should I start? And it's funny because sometimes, I don't know if you get bombarded, I get hit by everybody saying, hey, I got this new magic bullet. You got to do this. You got to do this. And if you do this, it's going to save all your problems, right? And we're very skeptical of those things, right? Usually those magic bullets, there is no magic bullet, right? But I love looking at those surveys because it tells us what's working for small businesses. And in my opinion, I think it's going to vary for each one of your business, so that what works for one of you will be a little bit different than what works for somebody else. It's going to depend on who your target, like if you're doing B2B, B2C, or what you're doing. Like there's not one channel that's always going to perform best. So like LinkedIn is a great channel for creating conversations. And especially if you're B2B and you're targeting in on very particular decision makers of certain sizes of business, and you're going after those B2B leads, LinkedIn can be a really good tool for you. If you're going into B2C, some of those other channels like Google or Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, some of these newer platforms, they can be a really good tool for you. So what we like to do is before we start any engagement, and I think this is good for really anybody, whether you use an agency or not, is kind of do a little bit of research and homework and try to find out what are the best, what channels align best with where my customers are, where are they, and then how can I reach them, and then run some forecasts to say, okay, realistically, if I were to go inside this channel, what do I expect to see from that? And talk with folks that are running campaigns right now in those areas successfully, and then you'll learn a lot of what they're finding successful. But a couple things that I would just point out as you look at that, like what is consistently at the top of that list in terms of ROI? Email marketing. Email marketing is always fantastic, right? It always comes up high. It doesn't cost very much. And it's a great way to include as part of your prospecting as you bring in new prospects. And once you get customers, as long as that's good value, sometimes a mistake I see with people with email marketing is they try to pitch their business too much. They're not adding value and as much as they should, right? So make sure with email that you're adding value that they really want to see. Offering great content, whether it's a blog or videos or just, I think that right now today, content and valuable, rich content is so important because people are a little bit skeptical about who to believe. And so, coming off as the authority and establishing that is super important too. And then SEO is great because it's a very complimentary service. And as somebody learns something about you, the first thing they're going to do is go to Google and try to find you. And so those are 3 areas that I really, really like. If you're in it for the long game and as a company, those are great tools that don't cost that much. And are good to help you, good to help you build your business on, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I'll make sure you both have the recording of this podcast to share to your email marketing lists so you can,
of course,
demonstrate thought leadership.
Hey, Russell, since you're talking about email lists, I got to say this since it's being recorded, do not email people and tell them that you have the solution to their problem when you haven't even talked to them. You don't know what their problems are.
Yeah, absolutely right.
They get deleted so fast in my inbox.
It's so true. It's so true. I think, Glenn, you nailed it, which is all you're trying to do through email marketing is establish a rapport, a conversation, and give value. Always, I have this acronym AASV, always add selfless value. And if you lead with that and it's good and appropriate content, especially for the target customer segment, if the more specific you are, like high integrity, it's high integrity.
Yep.
Glenn, thinking about how to make the most of working with a company like Bear Fox, I would reason that if Steve said, "Oh, we're an MSP, we'd love to work with Bear Fox, we want to nail SEO," that he might feel good about having made that decision. But the decision is really the easy part. It's all in the execution and the follow-up and the rapport and the connection with Bear Fox and making sure that we get the best ROI possible from that investment. And so I'm curious, Glenn, if you could guide us on, okay, in order for an MSP to make the most of working with a company like ours, you, MSP, need to be prepared with these resources internally so that we can help us help you.
Yeah. No, that's so great. I think what you're getting at, Russell, it's very much like a partnership, right?
It really has to be. And if you're not prepared for that, then like don't do it. And so I just want to be eyes wide open to how do you become most successful for a client?
Well, I think you cannot, like we talked about a little bit earlier, you can't just offer cookie cutter solutions where everything works for everybody. You have to understand what are the goals. Because like SEO, you shouldn't do SEO if you're in a cash flow, you got cash flow problems and I need leads now, right? Like SEO is patience. Right? You got to have patience with SEO. You got to be able to see it through and build it up. If you need cash flow, you need to be focusing on those cash flow drivers, and that's going to be mostly advertising. So understanding what the company goals are, what their timeline is, sometimes they have an impatient owner that's, I got to see this in the next 2 months, or I can't do this. So we have to understand culturally and with what goals are there. And sometimes folks may not even know what those goals are. We have to kind of talk those through and then figure out, okay, what's best. And then that communication is really good. Like, I think about our best client right now. He's a small, one of our, I shouldn't say he's the best, but he's in Silicon Valley, and the communication with him is so good. And he'll come in and say, okay, here, these leads that came in, these are 5 out of 5. These are 3, these are 2. And then that feedback is so valuable to us because we can go, where did those come from? How do we get more of those, and cultivate that? And then let's cut this out. So having that kind of relationship and trusted relationship and partnership, so valuable, so valuable.
Right. So what I'm hearing is don't pursue an SEO partner unless you're prepared to be a partner.
Right. Yeah.
Makes sense. Well,
Yeah.
and the thing that's so compelling for MSPs is take a managed service agreement, Steve, that you have at Help Desk, and I'm probably going to undercalculate this, but let's say your average monthly recurring revenue, because you're a subscription business for at least part of your business, is say average is say $4,000 a month, and maybe it's more. Your gross margin is say 50%. That's $2,000 a month of gross margin, and you tend to keep your clients for a really long time. So let's say you keep your clients for on average 5 years. 5 years times $2,000 is like $125,000 of lifetime value of gross margin. Theoretically, as an MSP, you should be willing to spend assuming you have the cash, right? Spend quite handsomely to acquire that customer. And my question for you, Glenn, is, does that make it, I'm assuming, but does that make it easier to work with a company like yours when you know that the lifetime value is really robust?
Oh yeah, it's so valuable. You have to, there's two metrics there. Lifetime value is one of them, and then the acquisition cost is the other, right? Like if we look at this and say, okay, that lifetime value is $10,000 for our company. That's how much we're going to get in revenue from that customer over their lifetime, right? And then I have to say, okay, what am I willing to get this customer? What makes sense with my finances, right? If I'm getting that customer for $200 or $500, will that work within our model? And then oftentimes as an agency, when we're working with people, I'm thinking of what one individual, he's like, hey, as long as you can keep getting us qualified leads at $300 a lead, we will keep scaling our growth. And so that's definitely a great way of looking at it, going back to predictability, to say, hey, here's my lifetime value, here's my acquisition cost. How do we keep that acquisition cost at or below where we need to go and scale it up? Yeah. It's a great way of thinking it. You're kind of thinking like an accountant, Russell. It's good.
Well, what I'm hearing is for somebody like Steve and really being a thought leader in the MSP segment that guides a lot of his fellow MSP peers, it is about making sure that, hey, do we have somebody that owns the outcome of this initiative, which is probably not the CEO. I mean, sometimes it could be, but he's got other things to do, number one. And number two, do we have a measurement mechanism to quantify the effectiveness of this strategy so that we can give feedback to you, Glenn, to continue to do more of that, or right, pivot to another strategy. But if we're lacking either of those things, like, listen, don't dive into the deep end, because you're going to make an investment without a clear return.
Yeah. And having those objectives, like if you have somebody that's holding that marketing rock within the organization, and you're saying, one of my rocks this quarter is to make sure that I keep my cost per acquisition below this number. And then you can do that predictably. Boy, that's a pretty powerful thing. And then often what happens, as we know, is, okay, what can you do it for 20% less, right?
Yeah.
And so you're always stretching yourself to say, how can we do this in a more profitable way for the company?
So Glenn, you're talking money now, and best in class, you're going to want to spend, not that you want to hear this, 2% of revenue is what we're being told. And then you have to invest that money towards personnel, marketing personnel, events, advertisement, like you said, to get the revenue coming in even greater. Do you work with organizations to figure out what an appropriate amount to spend on the SEO?
No, that's a great question. And I think that, again, the ideal mix will depend on what it is for each company, but I think there's certain things that should be part of your toolbox with each company. I believe that SEO should be a foundational part, because it's such a great long-term building your equity. And, if you ever want to sell your company in the future, that's such a tremendous value to say, look at how much free traffic that we have coming into our site every month. And it's a continued revenue stream that you don't have to worry about me bringing in new business. Like, it's just built to do it. So back to your question though, yeah, I would say today you want to have a good CRM, right? You want to have a good mechanism to be able to work with your clients, your prospects, creating those email flows, that automation that in place. You want to make sure that automation, you're taking full advantage of it. You've got a good content plan. SEO is important. And then some of the other things like social media and advertising can help supplement some of those other initiatives too. So that's a great question. And I don't know if we can solve it today in the podcast, but we talk about 360-degree support sometimes. And I'm a big firm believer that 1 + 1 can equal 3, right? There's synergies with some of these different marketing activities. When you do them together, they work better than when you do them in isolation. But the trick there is don't spread yourself too thin, right? You want to focus on a few things that you can do really, really well, and then really own those. And if you do that, you're going to get better traction from your marketing campaign.
And Glenn, just to press you and not let you out of the box here, or the ring, maybe the ring, boxing ring is better. How much should a typical company in a range, right, plan to spend with a company like Bear Fox on a monthly basis? What should they prepare for?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. Usually, what we're working with is companies. We're a full service agency, so we have 20 people that are here, and so there's freelancers that you can work with. If you're just starting out and you're just kind of tinkering around, you could pick a good freelancer or somebody that you can work with. Usually, what we do is we're working with companies that are making over $1 million or more in revenue. They're looking to add at least another $20,000-$30,000 a month in new revenue for their business, and they're able to invest $3,000-$4,000 a month to get it. And so a lot of times we'll talk with people. If they're not in that position, that's okay. We'll say, hey, let's point you to somebody that's a better fit. But those are kind of our ideal client persona. Is those companies are a little bit larger, small, mid-sized companies looking to scale. Maybe they've tried some things in the past and they just haven't gotten traction from them. I love that spot for us as an agency because it allows us to specialize. If there's one thing I've learned about digital marketing is there's always somebody smarter at it than me, right? Mm-hmm. So what I try to do is hire people that are really good at email, at SEO, at this and that, and hire them and bring them in so that, the clients we work with can have access to really, really smart specialists, right? Mm-hmm. Not one jack of all trades. I think that's a little different than how, that working with a smaller freelancer.
Couple of last questions. If Help Desk Cavalry, well, Steve, what's an area in the segment right now and what MSPs are offering their clients that's particularly hot or of interest, or tends to be something many clients are very interested in talking about today? Is there a
cybersecurity
is an easy one. Yeah, cybersecurity is an easy one. So what I'm wondering, Glenn, is could companies have a slice of their business, really focus on, hey, let's optimize for this service line very specifically versus the company writ large? And is that reasonable? Is that a reasonable strategy as a tip of the spear acquisition?
Super smart
aspect.
It's super, super smart. I'm thinking about a client of ours right now. They focus in on cybersecurity, and they have other services that they provide, but by owning that one particular service, they are able to dominate it quickly. They're able to get higher up in those search rankings, move more, accelerate in those rankings, and also. What we like to do, and if ad campaigns, is if you have a very focused ad campaign and it comes into a very focused landing page, Google's going to reward you by giving you better advertising costs. You're going to, if your quality scores are really good, you're going to pay less in advertising than if you cast a really wide net. And then you say, hey, Google, I want all these people. Google's going to say, okay, I'm going to give you that, but it's going to cost you more money. Actually, Google, you can benefit. It's called if I get a quality score that's 3 times better than this campaign, my cost per click is going to be 3 times less. So it's actually really, really smart to niche down that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And if Steve's they write, I think you write some really good content, Steve. They create all this content. Do you help them at Bear Fox? I'll call launch the grenade land and expand strategy, so that they can then leverage their content. Sure. Could they leverage it for SEO? Yes. Could they also leverage it on social? Yes. Do you help them propagate the content?
Right. Yeah, for sure. It's I guess I have to be honest here. Like, you guys know your business better than we do, right? You're the subject matter experts. And so we've got professional copywriters, and they can help and partner. And sometimes some of our clients are saying, hey, we'd like to really write the content and create this content because we're the subject matter experts, and we can partner with them in that way. But yeah, I think it needs to be appropriate for whatever channel. Like the type of content that you do on LinkedIn, for example, is going to be probably a little bit more sophisticated than something you do in another channel. So it's syndicating that content appropriately within email, on our blogs, within video, on social media is really important. Yeah, it's good. And sometimes for business owners, it can be just so overwhelming. They're like, hey, I'm running my business. The last thing in the world I want to do is sit down and write a blog post, right? And so I think that's one area that, you tap into a content writer and you say, okay. And usually within a couple, 2-3 months, they get up that learning curve. And are they going to write it as well as you would write it in terms of your knowledge? No. But they're gonna get there and approximate, and then that's what reviews are all about, right? That we send it to you and you're like, okay, that's good, or no, we're off base. Right.
Last question, Steve. As a voice for MSPs, and you've been around a long time, you've ridden cycles, you've stayed in the game. If you were to kind of be the voice for the segment and have internalized what we've heard today from Bear Fox, curious what's like 1 or 2 things that you're taking away, or that you're curious about, or that you might suggest to other MSPs to be curious about if they're either looking for a partner like Bear Fox or working with a company like Bear Fox.
Well, by far the first thing that got me focused was the predictive growth. Going after the actual accounts that we're looking for, that we fit best with. I think that's a great approach for us. You'd think after 10 years we would have gotten there, but it's just been so easy to open up our doors to those who knock. And luckily we've been blessed with great opportunities that have worked out for us for the most part. We got to change that, go after accounts that make a lot of sense for us. The idea around SEO, to me, I'm excited about, but I know there's a lot more than just the SEO aspect, and what Glen has been talking about with the clicks and these different categories. So getting a more in-depth knowledge and learning how that incorporates into the package that you're offering, Glen, I think would be a great follow-up conversation for anybody listening to this, as well as myself.
Yeah, awesome, Steve. Thank you. And Glen, you shared with me before the top 5 things that you might want to think about if you're interested in endeavoring into SEO. I would love if you wouldn't mind summarizing those, because I thought they were great takeaways that anybody listening to this can consider as they're evaluating their options.
Yeah, no, for sure. And Steve, just to put you at ease a little bit, SEO is such a complex and confusing thing for people to really get their hands around. And so that's, I definitely hear you there. The 5 things that I think if you're a small business owner and you're looking, okay, is SEO right for me? Should I invest in SEO? I would start by saying, okay, what do we know our identity as a company and what services we really want to focus on? Is there a niche that we really find profitable? And then we actually do an exercise. It's very inexpensive. We can assess the opportunity for you. find out how much volume is there. That's the number one. Is there relevant volume for these services on Google or other search engines, right? Number two is how difficult is it, right? You don't want to try to climb up a mountain that's this steep and you don't have a rope, right? You want to be able to go after those battles that you can really win and know how long it's going to take you to get there. That way you can manage expectations, you can build a very predictable plan. So having the right volume of traffic, going after traffic that's not going to be too difficult to own, that you can dominate it in the markets where you want. And then making sure SEO is not for everybody. If you're not patient and you don't want to see it, like if you're in, like we talked about earlier, if you're in a cash flow crunch, don't do SEO, right? Focus on those shorter term lead generators. Hammer your sales, go to your trade shows, run advertising. If you need to get leads now, and sometimes companies are in triage mode, right? They're like, I got to get cash now. So you got to be patient. That would be my number 3. And number 4 is, if you have a good, know your lifetime value of your customer, right? If it's more than $2,000, SEO is going to be a good candidate for you. If you know your lifetime value of the service that you provide is really low, it might not be worth the effort of investing in it to get those sales coming in from that channel. But as a rule of thumb, I'd say, yeah, my goodness, if your lifetime value is that high at 2,000 or above, you're going to have a really strong return on investment from that initiative. And then the final one, number 5, is 360-degree support. Like all boats rise. We talked about this 1 + 1 = 3 is when you're doing really great content, or you're doing email, or you're doing advertising or TV, radio, make sure that your SEO is going to help capture all of that interested traffic. Like if I'm running a radio ad, I don't really do a lot of radio, but you're going to naturally have people go immediately to their phones and Google you up as a company or some services. So make sure that when they're looking up your company, we call those branded terms like help desk cavalry, that you're top of the list there. Those are the easiest ones to get, but you also want to have some non-branded terms like those services that you really want to own. So those are my 5.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you both for being my guinea pigs and allowing me to run this experiment. I really wanted to do 2 things. I wanted to bring more visibility to the opportunities available to MSPs, specifically as they're thinking about growing their sphere of influence beyond just what traditionally has been a referral-based business, to ways to leverage the internet to drive a more predictable stream of leads. And Glen, I certainly wanted to highlight the work that Bear Fox is doing as an expert in the space and as a guide to support companies that are ready to take this leap and have a trusted, reliable partner that they can look to help take them to the promised land and not feel like they're always doing the heavy lifting themselves, because you've laid so much of the groundwork to help them be successful. So really, thank you both for being on the show today.
Thank you for the invitation.
Such a pleasure. Thank you, everybody, for listening to another episode of the Stride to Freedom podcast. We will see you next time. Thanks. Bye.